Hello everyone, welcome to Dark Fae Tarot. You're joining me on a warm, cloudy day in Brussels. Welcome to new subscribers, welcome back to those who already know me. So yeah, if you're new to this channel, you may know or not know that I do videos every now and then on purchasing decks. And I've done, I think, 2 so far, I can't remember. And then 1 on deck collection. I can't remember all of them, but I'm going to link a few of them below, above, I don't know where. But I'm going to link them in case you're interested. Those are more videos about purchasing, before purchasing a deck, things to think about. But I wanted to do a video more on once you've bought the deck and what happens if it doesn't work for you. And this was something that I have not touched upon, but I think it's very, very common. I know I've suffered from it. I know friends have. I know people who've been collecting decks for many years have said, yeah, it did just, I got it, and first feelings were it just went flat. So I wanted to first of all say that if you're in that predicament, you're not alone. And it can feel very disappointing. I think it's kind of like for a variety of reasons. It can be that we really, really wanted a deck because we've seen somebody else talk about it and we're in love with it. We're in love with how they're talking about it, that kind of thing. Or perhaps we've seen it and we've saved up for it, and I don't know, 6 months later or whatever, or 3 months later bought it, and it's just gone completely like nowhere. And so yeah, those are kind of like the things that I'm going to start off with. But if you're in any of these situations, don't worry. These are, I think, a dozen things that I've come up with, but there could be more because I'm going to be in a bit of a rambly state as well. But I know what I'm going to put on the YouTube thumbnail, but it'll be at least 10 plus things to think about after you've bought a deck and it didn't resonate. So deck disconnect, that's what I'm going to call it. So, there could be thoughts. Let's start off with, what are the thoughts that run through our mind? And it could be things like, why did I buy it in the first place? Why did I spend so much money on it? I don't like this card or whatever. Or it could be like, you pick it up and you're like, this is tiny. I thought it was going to be much bigger than this. Or you buy it and you get home, and this happens often with the internet purchases, and they're either too big or too small or something like that. So it could be mere reason. It could be even the paper quality, the card quality, the card stock. And, I just want to say first and foremost that a lot of us are buying items off the internet. We don't have metaphysical stores near us, or the opportunity of going to a friend's house and looking at their collection. And so it's going to happen. Like, let's get real. It's going to happen the same way when we buy clothes and we get them through the post and then we put them on. It's just like, I need to drop 4 sizes before I can get into this kind of thing. So you know what I mean. So anyway, so I thought that, I just want to say first and foremost, we live in an age where we're buying things online. And so it's kind of like quite real. So what happens next? Where do I go behind this? And I want to talk about some of the feelings that can happen and how we end up in that space before I look at like 10 things to do. One is that it's an overhyped deck, which means that it's kind of like it's been promoted heavily. You got to buy it. These people have it and it's so cool. Or buy the whole collection, buy all 10 of them or something, I don't know. But that's one part of it. The other thing is the FOMO purchase, which is very similar, along the same veins that other people have it, I need to have it in order for my collection to look cool. It could be, some things that, by the way, I've suffered from all of these things. So, it's not the pot calling the kettle black. It can be a depression purchase. It can just be like, I feel really down. I wanted something to boost me. I thought this would be it, and it just didn't do that. What you're holding on screen, also another one is what you're holding on screen doesn't match what you have in your hands, which is what I spoke about in the introduction. It just doesn't match. The colors are different. Remember, what we're seeing through the lens is not what we see in our hands. We get told that very, very often, that the actual tones, once you get them, do change. And of course they do, because we're seeing everything through these fantastic mobile devices and tablets, but in reality it might not be exactly the same color hue. The other one is that as I mentioned, the cardstock may not work for you. So either it's too thin or too thick, or you're holding it and it's just all slipping out of your hand and it's just flying out and you're thinking, this is like an 80-euro deck and I can't even keep it on the table because it's all sliding off. That could be something else. One other thing could be that as you start to look through it, what you might not have realized, perhaps you missed it in a walkthrough or something when you were watching it on TarotTube, is that there's a card in there, and all of a sudden you look at it and going, that reminds me of someone that I don't like, or that reminds me of a situation that really disturbs me. And I know at this point people might be like, that's when you have to do shadow work. It could be, but also it can be just off-putting, and then you're like, I don't want this deck actually now. So that's another aspect. The other one is you bought it because you really like that style. I don't know, it was 2021, it was the bee's knees or whatever. And then by the time you get it, because sometimes it takes a while to get a deck. It could be a Kickstarter purchase from the point where you bid to it arriving, and it's kind of like, I don't really like it anymore. Or it could be that, you know, if you're living in another part of the world, like, you know, if it's not North America, but especially in Europe, it will happen where the deck coming out in the US or Canada, and by the time it hits us here in a boutique, it happens with indie and it happens with mass market. By the time it hits us, it's like a 6-8 month difference sometimes. And by then you've either ordered it or something, and it comes in and you're like, okay, like I clearly have changed my choice by now. So that's another aspect. The other thing is that you've bought it kind of like, and then it's a system that you don't really use. Like there's this huge thing like Tarot de Masse, absolutely fantastic, or Thoth, fantastic, or you have to learn the Rider-Waite-Smith. So it fits one of these systems, and then you get it and you're like, I actually don't use this system. Why did I buy it? So that could be one of them. And then the other thing is it's a gift. You know, you received it as a gift and it just doesn't work for you. Or the last one I want to point out, sorry, this is quite long, but I want to talk about it, is that it's such a beautiful, expensive, pretty deck that you don't want to touch it, because it's kind of like, oh my God, I'm going to ruin it kind of thing, you know, and I saved up for it. And what happens if I ruin it? If I ruin a card and then, you know, I'll never get, it's that kind of thing, you know, or, you know, the gilding will chip and I just spent a lot of money on it kind of thing. And so you could kind of like use it because it just sits there at the side looking all pretty. And then it's just like, well, what was the point of that? So, sorry about the sirens if you're hearing them. But basically, what can you do? And hopefully, if any of these resonate, I just want to say, sorry about the sirens. If any of these resonate, you're not alone, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're not a bad purchaser or a bad consumer or whatever, or a bad choice maker. The first thing I want to just say is like the guilt stuff, the guilt tripping, just put it to the side. That's not what I'm here for, what this video is about. So just to be very clear. So what happens next and what you can do. So the first point I want to make, we're at a dozen here already in these points, and we're 8 minutes into this video. Okay, so what can you do? The first point is tip number 1 is make a note of what is not working for you. So you have opened it, it's the first 5-10 minutes, grab your notebook and just literally start writing. Like, it's beautiful, but I'm overwhelmed, and maybe the cards all look the same to me, or oh my God, I realized it's got colors that I don't like. It's all these browns and I don't like those browns anymore, or something like whatever is happening as you have gone through the deck, or whatever's put you off. Like, you really wanted it in February, but it's June now, and it's just like, yeah, whatever. You know, if it's any of those feelings, just write them down. It's fine. Just make a quick note of it. Or it's a deck that, you know, I wanted it because it had these fantastic winter vibes, and I'm in the middle of summer and it's baking. It's like, what am I going to do with this? So whatever it is, write it out. That's first thing. And initial thoughts and feelings are fine. It's just an awareness building exercise. Tip number 2, give it time. I hear this a lot, like, should I just get rid of it? Should I just put it on a secondhand website and just let it go? No, you don't need to do that, because whatever it is, give it time and let it just rest for a while. The good thing is, dissimilar to clothes purchasing, is that we're not trying to fit ourselves into something size-wise, at least. So, you know, you don't have to feel forced into liking the deck straight away or something. You can just like put it to the side and think, okay, it's not working for me right now, but just have a moment. It could also be that you've opened the deck and you're looking at it, and you might not be in the right place, or, you know, the person receiving it is just, they're not in the right place. So something that you really loved It's just, but you're not in that moment to enjoy it, basically. And that's nothing wrong with us or the deck. It's just timing. So give it time. That's tip number 2. And you don't have to devour it straight away. I hear that a lot, like, oh, as soon as the envelope comes in, I've got to rip it open and look at it straight away. I have that with some decks, and then with some others, I'm like, no, I'm in a bad, I have this with me. If I'm in a bad mood, the last thing I want to do is open a beautiful new deck, because I'm looking at it going, yeah, whatever, I don't like it. But there's nothing wrong with the deck or my purchase. It's just that my head's not there in the right space. So, it's just going to ruin the moment for me. And I know myself enough to know, put it to the side, maybe in a couple of days, grab a cup of coffee, give myself some of that time where I'm feeling a bit more packed up, and then open it and at least have the joy of enjoying it. So that's tip number 2, I think. Sorry if I'm going on a bit long here. Tip number 3. Sometimes a card is off-putting. Now, I touched about this in the introduction, but if a card is off-putting, do note it. Now, yes, there's an option of doing shadow work. So this is fantastic for the whole shadow work community. But the other thing about it is that sometimes I look at a card and it's just the initial look at that card, which I'm sitting there going, like, I've had that with certain decks where I'm looking at it going, that looks like either it's too much for me, too much nudity for me, or in that card I don't see anything. It's like there's a hill and a tree. What am I meant to do with that? But that's fine. Make a note of that as well. I have that with one of my decks. Sorry, it's up there now. I forgot to take that one down. But I have that with one of my decks where, it's the majestic earth. And I'm like, it's a cloud and a couple of trees and a hill. I could have got this from a postcard. And, and the thing is, it's beautiful. And then I was invited to look at, perhaps it's about space, and also actually in the end the deck was bringing back to a lot of memories of being young, walking hills like that when I was young and bored out of my mind because there was nothing else to do, and then kind of like and realizing that was a part of my life. So I don't know, there's a bit of a journey with that card. I can't remember which one now, from Majestic Earth. So many are similar to that one, but it is a beautiful deck, and I'm never going to get rid of that deck because now it holds a lot of memories. But at first I was a bit dismissive of it because I don't know, I guess it was too close to home in some ways. So let me show you a few decks because I'm talking, so you're probably just sitting there going, what? So let me show you one where I did a deck interview. So this is very well known as one of my favorite decks, which is the Murder of Crows Tarot by Corrado Roy. Now, this deck I purchased in end of 2020, no, beginning of 2022, I think, something like that. I didn't open it till my birthday. It was actually a birthday present for myself, which is in October. So it sat there for 8 months, unopened, wrapped. And you've all seen this deck. I absolutely love this deck. It's a deck that I will never let go of. It's the mass market version by Lo Scarabeo. But one of the things that I remember was when I showed it initially after unwrapping it on TarotTube, like I did a video of unveiling it, I was kind of like, not sure if I'm going to use this. But then I think it was at Christmas, I did a deck interview with this, and the deck interview told me a lot. For me, the deck interview showed me that this is going to be a High Priestess deck for me, and I was like, okay. And the deck really became a deck all about how I see my spiritual growth, setting standards, setting direction. The High Priestess for me is very much about the guidance of spiritual growth, specifically related to channels that we use, including tarot. But because she is lifting that veil, this deck became very much about how do I lift the veil within my own practice. And so this deck took on a new flavor and meaning for me. It's also a very, very practical deck. It's, even though the High Priestess may sound like a very up high in the clouds kind of like key, for me, spirituality has to be practical, otherwise it's not going to work. And this deck is very, very practical. It does sometimes say to me things like, you need to cut the crap, get on with it, that kind of thing. And I really like the deck for this. It's a very much a deck which is grounded and yet spiritual, which is a perfect combination for me. And of course, it's called the Murder of Crows, which really, that says everything. So I'm showing this deck as a deck which initially I was like, why did I buy this? And then it opened up, and then I used it for a month and I fell in love with it, and now it's one of my must-have decks. It's even showing a little wear, which is interesting. You know, most of my decks don't have that, but when it shows a little bit of a wear, it means I've really loved it, basically. So there you go. So that's the Measure of Crows Tarot by Corrado Roy. Still available. So the next one, and I'll show some more decks, is that is a deck which I haven't taken out here to show you, but it doesn't matter. It's the point of don't feel guilty. Sorry, that was the next point I wanted to make, which was don't feel guilty if you buy a deck and it's not something you like. And I said that right at the beginning, but I want to make a separate point, because there is this thing where it's like, if I don't like it straight away, well, I've done something wrong. And that really can discolor the feeling with the deck. And I want to come back to that. There's a deck here that I'm going to show, which is the Sacred Bee Tarot. Now, I did a review of this. I used this for the whole of, I think it was August. And I just did a review thinking, what are you talking about? You just did a review saying you loved it. But when I initially got this deck in January, I loved it. But I preferred actually the Thoth version, which I didn't do the review on. That's going to be like another time, basically. But I initially preferred the Thoth version, and this is the Rider-Waite version of the Kelly Burton decks. And I was kind of like, it's beautiful, but should I have got it? Should I have spent that money? I don't like it the way I like the other one. And I put myself into a bit of a guilt trip. Now, this deck, beautiful, as I mentioned, it's Kelly Burton. It's an indie deck. These decks for me, all of the Kelly Burton B decks, are very, very precious. And now the gilding's a little bit worn there. But they're very, very precious because they really are very maternal energy for me, given the fact that the way I interpret the bee, I interpret it very close to the Capricorn as a worker, a very strong worker energy, where the sun is in Capricorn and we get on with life and we get on with, you know, the fact that in the winter things are going to be tough, but we have the birth of the Sun King. So I really equate that energy to it's tough, but the light is coming through. And it's a very maternal energy for me. You've heard me talk about this in the review of this. And so I felt really guilty buying it, thinking I should have spent that money, but these decks are very close to my heart, all of them. And so I gave it some time, and I started to realize the guilt feeling that I didn't click with it straight away was actually coloring how I see the deck. And then the more I sat with the deck, the more I was like, oh, I actually need to work with this deck. I look at the High Priestess. I'll talk about the High Priestess, and there she is. So I worked with it in August, and of course I love the deck now. I really want to work with the other one, which is Journey of a Sacred Bee, the very first deck. I want to work with that one too. But yeah, I really like this deck now, and of course I've got now fond memories of working with it. The color palette is just amazing, and I wouldn't be without it. But you know, you can also see a trend here, by the way, which is all the decks I'm showing you I've actually been working with. So you can see how it's so important to work with our decks, because that's part of the click, I think anyway. Okay, so the next one. Okay, the other one I want to, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes, that's looking down. The other point I want to make is if you've made purchase based on FOMO and hype, and I'm thinking of kind of like, you know, what do I show here? Because that happens with everything, right? FOMO and hype. But if we get the deck and we've kind of like done it to wanting to belong, it can be that basically that is coloring the guilt behind the deck rather than actually just enjoying the deck. I think it's wrapped in with guilt. But I want to talk about FOMO. Now, let me show you an example. I don't know if this is the best example, but I'm just trying to look around my desk. It's the Divine Circus Oracle cards. Now, this is a fantastic deck, and I have enjoyed it. But I got the feeling after I bought it that I bought it out of FOMO, because I wanted to join in with everybody else who likes the Divine Circus. Now, I like the circus theme. I need to get the Night Circus, that deck, actually, that tarot deck. But I like the circus theme, but I remember at the time that, you know, the guilt of purchasing something on a FOMO ended up ruining like just enjoying it. It was almost like, you know, you should never buy something on FOMO. It's like, excuse me, like a lot of the collection is on FOMO actually, but these are the backs. But I ended up really, really liking this deck again because I like the images. I'm one of those people that actually likes the images of this deck. I know some people don't. I think it's beautiful. I love stuff like this. The intricacy of the artwork, especially when it's very detailed, is stunning. I don't like the keywords that much, but the actual the artwork is what draws me in. I think it's beautiful. Even images like these, I know they're not for everyone, but I and so yeah, I really enjoy the deck. But I think that part of it also was that I need to enjoy the deck the way everybody else does, and that doesn't work for me actually. I need to enjoy the deck the way it works for me. And this is a very image driven deck for me. It's more kind of like what I'm going to get from intuition of looking at the cards, and then after I'll go at the guidebook. But you know, those grey roses are absolutely stunning with that red pop of red, and that's the stuff that I need to know because that's why I enjoy the decks. So you know, I love stuff like this, and it says what this says, dark harlequin. I mean, that doesn't really mean much to me, but it's the image itself which is just captivating. And I know it's not for everyone. You're like, this is like has nothing to do with reality, but for me, this brings back images and memories. Watching, you know, films like Moulin Rouge and stuff like that. It's a fantasy world, a circus, a musical world, a world of make-believe and character and masks, and that, you know, that Venetian theme that we get in the Mardi Gras. This deck is really harking into and playing into that, not just archetypes, but the party realm, right, of the ghost and the spirit. And I love it for that, and that's when I started to enjoy the deck. I enjoyed it when I made it something of my own rather than how everybody else likes the deck. So that's another thing to remember, that you don't have to love the deck the way other people do. I hardly use the guidebook for it. I just use it more intuitively for creative writing and stuff like that. Okay. The other one is, and this is an interesting one, is sometimes a deck is meant to work as an altar deck rather than a tarot deck for me. Personally, for me, definitely. I'll give you a good example, which is the Illuminated Earth. This and the Faceted Garden together, they both work for me really, really well as altar cards. I just love them in the sense that they really draw upon the energies that I'm interested in. I don't know, for that week. So for example, if I shuffle the Illuminated Earth and I pull a card, I've got here source, and it can be for that week that I need to start thinking about the source of my abundance, the source of friendships and relationships, the source of energy, you know, am I depriving myself, my source towards, as in my relationship with my higher power, whatever I believe in. If you don't, that's fine too. My source and my connection with nature. So this is a really interesting pull for me, and that's why I love these decks. But initially when I got them, I remember thinking, how am I going to use these? Because they were beautiful, but they just, I like them for pulls as well, and you can see them on my Instagram, but really it's that altar space where they started to make sense for me, and that's not going to be for everyone. The other way I also used them, and you saw them in the video I did with the Maybon spread that I created, and I'll link that somewhere as well. But I use them, you know, I use some of these element cards for the Maybon spread, and that is how these cards work better for me as well as placement cards. So I could take a card such as structure and make a whole spread out of that. And actually that is a spread in itself if you look at it, and you've got there the top, so you could have there the top influences, you could have the middle part of the structure, at the bottom what are the foundations of that pyramid. And just using this, you actually have a spread that you can create, and you can put this, you know, at the top of your spread or on the side or whatever as a reminder, and you've got this rainbow effect over it, which means all is well, all is okay. But again, these are decks that I use not really always as an oracle within a spread in that sense. They're more kind of like jumping off points for thinking, for journaling, and creating new avenues. I guess that's how I'm going to put it. Or, you know, as altar cards for me to look at every morning as I walk past, going, okay, that's the theme for this week, you know, as a reminder. Okay. So the other one is don't think if you don't like that particular deck, and I want to put this in. If you buy a deck by a particular author, or you get it and it doesn't work for you, don't think that all the decks in that by that author are not going to work for you, because I think that can happen quite a bit. And I will show you a deck which kind of like was a little bit kind of like, which is, here it is. I'm sorry, I'm going on a bit, but hopefully this is helping you all. This is a deck that I bought called the Gaian Tarot, not that way around, the Gaian Tarot, and by Joanna Colbert. Now I know that several of my friends really love this deck. I bought it wanting to love it, and it just didn't do anything. Now I know people have chopped off the borders and done a lot with it, but it just didn't work for me. It was just like, so I bought it, and I'm just going to take out some of the cards because they're huge. The other way around, they're huge. And I just was like, I'm not connecting with this. And I was working with it, I think it was June of 2022 or July, I can't remember, one of those months of last year. I've done a review for it. So I pulled a card every day, but I was just not connecting. And then this is the trick that I used, which might work for you, which is I got the other Joanna Colbert deck, the Herbcrafter's Tarot. Now I love this deck. And I know people have done this the other way around, by the way, what I'm about to describe, but I started to pull cards together, and then all of a sudden the Gaian Tarot, it just woke up. The whole deck just started to speak another language. So I'm going to just pull cards randomly and let's see what we get. Bear with me as I try and balance them. So, okay, what do we have here? I have here the 5 of Water, and I have here 7 of Earth Oak. So 7 of Pentacles, 5 of Cups. So look at that, that's so beautiful. If you put the other way around, actually, it might even look even better. But you know, she's kind of like waiting for, you know, the 5 of Cups is always about disappointment, but in a way, this is the remedy, like wait, the abundance is coming through, have patience. So, you know, these cards, when I put them together, they started to just sing, and I was pleasantly surprised. What do I have here? Awakening, which is judgment, and I have here 6 of Fire, 6 of Wands. How beautiful, like, you know, that we have an awakening with this victory, and we are exposed, and it's a good time also to let go of things as we embrace something successful. So I'm just randomly doing pulls here. As you can see, I enjoy doing stuff like this. What do I have here? 6 of Earth, 6 of Pentacles, and have 8 of Earth. How beautiful that they work together. So really about giving and receiving. And 8 of Earth, you know, putting that effort in, that time, that skill. How they just look so gorgeous together. So hopefully this gives you an idea where sometimes if the author's deck doesn't work and they have other decks, I mean, obviously you have to think of whether or not they have decks, or getting another deck that's similar in theme, or I don't know, put pairs together. And sometimes pairing decks together brings to life the other deck, and that way you start to really enjoy it and connect. And now I want to get rid of the Gaian Tarot. I actually quite like it and I want to use it again, but this was a very good example of, you know, not jumping to the gun, but kind of like using my imagination of how can I connect with this a bit better. So let me just put these away so I can actually move things around. I have no idea what tip I'm on by now. I'm gonna have to go back and when I bookmark it, try and figure it all out. Okay, so the next one is journaling. I wanted to bring this up, which is, you might get a deck and you're sitting there going, okay, and I've definitely had that. So let me show you a deck which I got as a gift, and I'm not going to get rid of it, which is my Moonchild, the original Moonchild. This was gifted to me by Marianne of Waves of Your Soul. Now this is a deck which I didn't connect with it initially, and also by then I have to say I'm a bit spoiled because I already knew that the Shadow Moonchild was coming out, and I already knew that like that was going to be my deck. So I was kind of like, okay, let's see you then. You know, there's a bit of a smug feeling. But I loved, you know, I was gifted it, and I appreciate it because it gives me a chance to connect. And then I thought, okay, this is not going to work. So what I did, and I'm still doing it, is I got hold of, I've already had this before, which is Journaling the Tarot by Andy Matz. Now this is just I can't can't speak now, a book with some journaling prompts. So what you can do is just, well, maybe not with Divine Wisdom, because that's one of the odd cards, but let's say we get 10 of Swords. What you can do is you get 10 of Swords, and instead of going straight to the guidebook, you have the image in front of you. You get to the 10 of Swords in Andy Matz's book, and what do we have here? What is he saying here? 2 of Swords, 6 of Swords. Here we have. So you get these questions. And what you can do is you can ask yourself these questions if you pull the 10 of Swords. You can pull, how are you coping? What can you do better developing your coping skills? Who or what are you done with? Why? You know, powerful card of surrender. What is bottoming out in your life, hitting bottom? What is your next step? Why might it be a good idea for you to take a mental health day? What chapter in your life needs to end in order for a new and better one to begin? So I've just read out literally like 5 questions, I think, here. You've got plenty. I'm not going to read them all. I mean, it's an excellent way. I don't know. I bought this for like 10 euros. Hopefully it's not too expensive now. But you've got basically a set of journal questions to ask. And all of a sudden, looking at this and looking how, you know, she's draped in this beautiful jeweled outfit, but she's got these swords and then the mountains behind her. This really starts to bring back to me when I was looking at those questions of kind of like, it's not as bad as it seems. Perhaps a lot of it is mentally just going on in my own head. Perhaps I've got to acknowledge that some things are not work for me, because she's on her knees here. So, you know, it's very powerful and evocative when I start to think of it that way. And that's what I mean by, you know, sometimes it's good to have a book which gets us to question things and act upon them. And another one that I've just heard of, remembered from the top of my mind is Tarot Yourself by Mary Greer. I'll put that below as well. That's a really good workbook to use, and at the same time you can use one of these decks that you are not connecting with to tarot yourself, and at the same time get to know the deck. And then the final one I want to say, and I have no idea what tip I'm on by now, is no, there's 2 left. Is the deck suited more to a certain season? That you need to be mindful of. There are times when decks, I'm just going to pull this right now, but you know, there are times, there's also back there you can see I've got the Yellow Goliath. The Yellow Goliath for me is definitely a deck which comes more alive in the winter. It just does. It's a deck which I'm in the middle of filming, so I don't know if I should go get it, but maybe if you bear with me, I'll just quickly sneak over and get the deck, because then you can have a better look at what I'm talking about. But this deck I bought a few years ago, but it's really just, it comes alive when I'm approaching the winter solstice. So from November onwards, this deck calls me. November in Brussels is very foggy, misty. We still don't have, we have some rain, but you know, there's a lot of fog. Now it comes with this huge guidebook. But the images in this deck are just amazing. I bought this deck as a present for myself for my birthday a few years ago. I don't know, about 3 years ago now. And I just think it's a beautiful deck. And it comes in with a built-in oracle, so it's huge. It's a Goliath. But this is, again, a deck that I connect better with in its season. If I pull this out in the middle of summer, it just feels very clunky, heavy. If I pull this out at the winter solstice, it works very, very well. So this is again a deck which really, you know, I think that I need to give it justice by putting it on my desk at the right time of year. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up with the last one because I know this is so long, sorry. Which is, right, the last one I want to say is pressure of liking something because everybody else does. That's part of the FOMO, but also because you've either, your favorite tarot tuber loves it, and because they love it, you should love it too. I mean, that's like the kiss of death, I think, sometimes for us in the death. Not because there's anything wrong with a tarot tuber loving a deck and favoring it. Absolutely no. It's more to do with how the internet skews our vision of things. And I didn't have this so much with a tarot tuber, but I had this with the community which really, really loves this particular deck, where the pressure to love it was so much that when I got it, I was just like, oh, I don't get it. So I've only got the pocket version still, which is, of course, my beloved Wild Unknown Pocket Tarot. Now, the amazing thing is recently I've been doing a series of works on something, and I am using this deck in partnership with a few others. It goes back to using decks together and then they come alive. And when I started using with another deck, which I'm going to show all of that at the end of this month, it was, well, now I've just dropped a whole lot of deck cards. It really just started working for me straight away. I mean, let me just show you a few cards here because I've just dropped a whole load. It just started working for me straight away. Now, you've all seen this deck, but there seems to be this whole thing that, like, because this is a definitive deck, it's so well known, you have to love it. And I think that in my head preconditioned me to think, you have to love this. And so when I didn't love it, I was just like, well, there's something wrong with the deck or me or something. And I'm so glad that I didn't act on instinct and just get rid of it. Instead, I waited, and then all of a sudden, with on a challenge that I'm doing, I brought this out and it worked beautifully. Really enjoying it. So this is another example of just not pressurizing myself to love something and allowing myself to love it in a more organic way. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking now because I've been talking a lot and we're at 37 minutes. I hope you enjoyed this. I think it's a dozen tips now on how to connect with your deck if you want it to work for you, and it doesn't if you have a deck disconnect. And I hope that some of these tips resonate. Don't feel alone, and thank you for watching today. I will see you all soon. Take care now. Bye.